Good morning. It's Tom Jordan. We have some serious questions about this massive signature fraud scheme that allowed for the removal of the leading Republican candidate for governor in Michigan. Do you remember this? 2022, James Craig, Democrats somehow uncovered a whole slew of fraudulent signatures so that people like James Craig, who was ahead of Gretchen Whitmer in the polls for the governor's office, was suddenly no longer allowed to run for office, along with four other GOP candidates as well. Were their campaigns purposefully derailed? It certainly seems like that was potentially the case. There was a massive signature fraudster who had been guilty of the same thing prior to that whole endeavor as well. Was Attorney General Dana Nessel's actions, or lack thereof, what was their deal? Why didn't she act? Did she know more about this before she let on that she knew? Because the convicted felon behind that fraud scheme, his name is Sean Wilmoth, a guy apparently already notorious for election fraud, was somehow hired to do a similar signature gathering project by a campaign involving Dana Nessel's wife. This was uncovered by Charlie LeDuff, intrepid investigative reporter. And he brought this to light. It came out yesterday. So that thing that happened with Dana Nessel's wife, her campaign, they were defrauded by the same guy in 2020, prior to the gubernatorial campaign. And also prior to Dana Nessel telling the Republicans they should have Googled the guy first. They made a big mistake by not doing their due diligence in solving it. Here's Dana Nessel.
I think that just Googling some of these individuals, you would have seen things pop up from other states as a candidate, as a consultant, or a proponent of a ballot proposal. You must take the necessary time and effort to do your due diligence and research these firms.
Yeah, well, maybe if she helped, like, hey, we've been scammed by this guy too. So Dana Nessel's advice to Google, who you're trusting might hit differently if she had Googled the felon her wife's campaign paid over $1 million for. This is amazing journalism, and I just hope that the rest of the so-called journalists in the state of Michigan follow Charlie LeDuff's lead here, because here's a bit of history, and then Charlie will get into it all of us. Just Sean Wilmoth, this guy, he's a convicted felon for election fraud. And he was hired by many different campaigns, despite his criminal record being easily accessible through a simple internet search. And the Republican candidates were targeted back, as I mentioned, in 2022. The campaigns were derailed by his firm, this guy, and 5 of the gubernatorial candidates were disqualified as a result. And so Dana Nessel came out and she kind of chastised the Republicans. Why don't you do your due diligence? And then Charlie LeDuff uncovers something massive involving Dana Nessel's own. He's been on this case for a bit. Charlie LeDuff joins me now. Charlie's the only one I know who's uncovered this. I don't think anyone else has even heard about this, and if they have, maybe they try to cover it up. Who knows? Charlie, it's good to have you back on the program. This is amazing stuff. It came out yesterday. You've written about it for enjoyer.com. You put it on your No BS News Hour podcast, and it was really good. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good morning. It's a video, too. The video's better.
The video is amazing. And that was your video we just used right there. I mean, people could see Charlie approaching Wilmoth and asking him if he can have his signature. And it's pretty funny. It's in jest. And then, Charlie at the end says, I'll just do it myself because, I can sign your name because that's what you do apparently with all these. It's funny, but it's a serious topic. And I'm wondering, like, how does Michigan's Attorney General, Dana Nessel, taking the moral high ground when charging this felon for derailing the Republican campaigns with his fraudulent signatures, but when that same felon scuttled her wife's ballot initiative prior to this, she stayed silent during that whole time. Why do you think she's so selective?
I think she's an idiot. What else am I supposed to say? I mean, she's proven it. Ask the people of Flint. She's incompetent. So just to make it clear, the video makes it clear. You guys go to Enjoyer or go to my Twitter page, but 5 Republican candidates get kicked off the ballot in, what was that, Tom, 2020?
2022.
Yeah, for the 2022 election. Because they hire this boob, this walking crime wave, this Sean guy, to gather their signatures. 5 different Republicans all hired the same company. They didn't know it. And his people sat around and just made up names, wrote down names, passed the pen around, changed pen colors, And it was so obvious that they all got taken out. Nessel holds a press conference a year after that saying, I'm going to bring charges, but you dummies should have known better. Do your due diligence. But it turns out that the year before Sean, I call him Middle Finger Freddy, One Finger Freddy, because he gives me the finger. The year before, Nessel's wife was trying to get a gay rights initiative on the ballot. She hired One Finger Freddy. Her ballot proposal got kicked out because of 200,000 bogus signatures. Dana Nessel's wife's campaign paid Freddie over $1 million in 2 months for bad signatures. Why didn't Nessel charge him the year before? If she had charged him the year before, maybe James Craig or Perry Johnson or somebody else would be governor, and we wouldn't be in this mess that we're in. But she didn't do it.
And that's a big premise of your video that you put out there. And I guess one of my questions is, was she aware? I mean, you're saying that Dana Nessel's wife, her nonprofit, was also defrauded by this guy. Apparently, 200,000 signatures. Was she? Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. And so was she aware of that? I mean, did she know
Okay.
that, and then she just kept silent about it?
All I know is when Dum Dana says you should simply Google this man. Oh, by the way, this guy did the very same thing in Virginia in 2010. He pled guilty to election fraud. What did he do? He told his people to make up the signatures. That's what he did. Okay.
Yeah.
So Nessel didn't even have to Google him. She didn't have to Google him. All she had to do was tap the shoulder on the next pillow over and ask her wife. This whole gay rights legislation started with Dana Nessel. That's what she was doing before she became Attorney General. When she became Attorney General, her wife took over. So this is Dana Nessel's lifetime project, her pet project, her big want, gay rights and codified in the state constitution. Your wife spends $1 million and almost half of the ballots are bogus. I mean, the signatures, and you don't know anything? It's incomprehensible.
Okay, so this is a major story. I mean, this is humongous. So effectively what happened here, we have a guy who was convicted of signature fraud back in 2010, 2011 timeframe. Yeah. That's public record. She's an attorney general. She should have been aware of that. If she was and she didn't do anything, that's even more egregious. But let's say, for the sake of argument, she didn't know about she didn't do her own Google search on this guy. Yeah. So she was funding this. She was a big part of this campaign. This was her baby to get this gay rights initiative on the ballot. And they hired this same guy to collect the ballot signature, the signatures for this to get on the ballot. 200,000 of those signatures were fraudulent signatures. The way I'm reading this, this was Dana Nessel's campaign. She and her wife were together on this. When she became AG, she stepped down. Her wife took over, is what you're saying here. But this happened in 2020. 2 years prior to Sean Wilmoth defrauding all those gubernatorial candidates doing the exact same thing. So if she had spoken up at that point, that would have prevented the 2022 scandal, would it had not?
Probably, and why didn't you bring charges? Why didn't you look into the guy? Why didn't you, you're the chief law enforcement officer. You're here to protect us. Why didn't you protect us? Was it embarrassment? Professional embarrassment? Was it professional incompetence? Why didn't you do something? Because with this woman, there's just a track record now. Like, you can't do your job and it goes from one disaster to the other, right? We never get nobody in Flint responsible for Flint did a day in jail. And it's because we got this incompetent one. That's why. I mean, I can say it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
Terrible.
sure. All right. So there's no doubt she is aware now that, her campaign was defrauded by Sean Wilmoth, allegedly, as we say. And I guess there's something coming up in March. But do you foresee that any charges are going to? We know the 2022 thing, that this guy's being charged for that. Will there be charges now that we know that Dana Nessel is aware that she was defrauded in 2020 by this guy? Do you think she'll file charges now that it's out there and she can't hide it any longer? Do you think she'll act on it, the 2020 case? Why not?
No.
Why wouldn't she, do you think?
Yeah, it's embarrassing. Look, you can't even get her office, right? They got what's this guy's name? Danny. What grown man goes by Danny? Danny Wimmer. Let's call him out here. Danny. You got to email the Attorney General's office. I need a comment on this. Danny and Dana, they didn't even get back to me. They're just going to ignore it because I think that, there's a lot of stuff I'm working on, and I'm not sure Dana Nessel's not going to be removed from office by the time this is all said and done. They know I'm working on a lot of legitimate business, and they're afraid. So no, she's not going to touch it. And I'll tell you this, Tom. This guy, she announced these charges back in June of 2023. That was a month after she returned home from her luxurious Turks and Caicos trip that somebody else paid for.
Yeah.
But what's taking so long? This thing, I went to court. There was this guy giving me the finger. He dresses like a carny. He's got greasy hair. He's got stains on his shirt. This guy isn't a genius by any means. But why was the case pushed another 60 days? Another 2 months? What happened to, speedy justice is justice? You know what I mean? Something's going on where they're just kicking this can down the road. I have no proof of this. Just, I sit around and ponder this stuff. Maybe she's just trying to drag it out because it's embarrassing and, she can get out of Dodge and get out of office by the time this thing really does come to a head. But Too late. I got you, Dana.
All we can do, Charlie LeDuff got you. It's out there. So, I mean, for me, it seems like she should address this. And, all we can do is speculate because, as you mentioned, her office won't respond to your request to talk about it. They're ignoring you. So we speculate. But will you combine this to other actions she's taken? And she has drawn out a lot of these cases. We bring up the Lee Chatfield case a lot because that was still being drawn out. And there's a lot of embarrassing facts maybe involving her own office and other Democratic politicians in that case as well. So she's covering up a lot of evidence there that should have been released to the public. That's being drawn out. Same thing might be happening here. We don't know because she won't respond. Well, let me ask you this first. Matt Hall, he's now going to be he's the House leader now. He's promising certain investigations. Is he aware of this? And do you think if he is becoming aware of this and maybe Attorney General Dana Nessel's complicity in this signature fraud, at least covering it up, do you think that will be an investigation that Matt Hall and the GOP Republican House take on?
Let me see. Stand by, okay? Hold on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I hate to do this to your program, so I will just chat so there's no dead air. Let's see. There's a text from Speaker Hall.
From Matt Hall. Okay, let's see it.
Yeah, text it last night. He said to me, "Very interesting." Huh?
That was it. That was 2 words. 2 words. Okay.
I got a text from the Speaker of the House. Very interesting. There you go, Dana. By the way, a little aside here. So remember, they paid this guy $1 million. The wife's campaign paid this guy $1 million over 2 months. They also paid another firm about $1/3 over 2 months. You want to know who that firm was?
Who is that?
That firm is a democratically super connected, consulting firm who got, you might remember this, during COVID, it became a mini scandal when this firm got a no-bid COVID contract to do contact tracing and everybody got mad. Mm-hmm. Remember that one?
Oh, do I ever? Yes.
It's that K2K it's called. K2K also got paid. So here's the deal about Nessel's wife's campaign. I'm not sure whose signatures were bunk. Maybe both of them were bunk. You know what I mean? Maybe Nessel didn't want to drag this politically connected firm that everybody's so cozy with up in Lansing, didn't want to have to pull them in. I don't know. But, like human rights are a serious thing to me. And, that's God's work. I don't know what the referendum said, but equal justice for all, no doubt. And if I had worked and put money in and raised money and did the shoe leather and it turned out this way because 200,000 signatures are bogus, I would want an answer.
Yeah, I would have taken that approach as well. I would have been, listen, we were derailed by this guy, and this is the Fair and Equal Michigan campaign, which we're talking
Yeah.
about, which was Dana Nessel's and also Dana Nessel's wife, what they put, and they hired this guy. They were defrauded effectively. And embarrassed or not, they still were victims of a crime here. So
Allegedly.
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 Allegedly. But clearly the
No
guy
one's
didn't
ever
want to
looked
talk.
into it. You know what I mean? No charges have ever been filed, so I can't say that. I don't know.
Well, we could say it looks to us like maybe a crime was committed here. And it sounds like they know that they were defrauded by 200,000 signatures. And it sounds like that action right there is what derailed her entire campaign to get this on the ballot. So if that is all true, and that's if allegedly there was a crime committed, that's a major situation here. And we can't, and I mean, that's just another reason why we have a lot of skepticism when they come out. Dana Nessel came out many times along with Jocelyn Benson and saying everything in our election integrity is superior. We're top notch. We're probably the safest and most secure election system in the entire country. That's Michigan for you. But then we keep hearing these stories that were covered up that show that is absolutely not the case. And when you talk about signatures and the fraudulent signatures and the number and the scope of how many signatures are fake. And then they come out and say, yeah, but those are just for the ballot initiatives. The signatures that we won't verify during the election, those are all good. We're not worried about that. How can they be so sure?
You know what's funny? Well, first of all, what they do is a sample. They'll take like a couple of pages. They'll take about 500 signatures, right? And then they run them through. They run them through the system. And if enough of them don't match, the signatures are off, the addresses are wrong, the person's not even registered to vote, they don't exist on the voting rolls. If a certain amount are bogus, they throw the whole thing out. So it's a random sample. What's funny about this is Dana Nessel's wife organization sued Jocelyn Benson. So Nessel's wife's organization sued Benson because this was during COVID, remember? And they said they didn't have enough time to collect the signatures because of Whitmer's lockdown orders. So the Attorney General's family is suing the governor and the Secretary of State. You know, the Charlie's Angels, they're all doing, the gunshots. And they get a special break from the judge. The judge goes, well, you're right. You're supposed to get all this done in 180 days, but Gretchen Whitmer locked you down for 69 days. So I'm going to give you 69 extra days to get the signatures. So they got 69 extra days. Now, the signatures had to be in by June because you got to print the ballots up, right? So they get another special bend over backwards from the government, which is, well, it's too late to make the ballot for 2020. So we're going to let you put these signatures in the refrigerator, and we're going to bring them out and defrost them, and let you get on the ballot in 2022. How nuts is that? Now,
wow.
Here's the woe is you media angle of this. They suck. Cancel your subscriptions and go to theenjoyer.com because of all the boring vomit stories they do, right? This Lansing crew especially. They did the James Craig signature stuff, right? We all know about it. It was big in America. Like, look at Michigan. Everybody got kicked off the ballot. But there were barrels of ink spilled on Dana Nessel's wife's gay rights legislation and this whole, drama around it. And the very same people that wrote about the drama of it being thrown off the ballot are the very same people that wrote about James Craig's signature imbroglio. But they never put it together. They never, ever put this guy together and what Nessel did and did not do. You know why? Because they're in bed with her. They're not looking at you.
That's exactly what it is. They're in bed figuratively with Dana Nessel and Gretchen Whitmer and Jocelyn Benson, and if anything, embarrasses them. And I think they probably go out and have drinks together, and they're like, "Yeah, can you not please do this? It's just embarrassing. It's not a big deal. I'd appreciate if you wouldn't do it, and if you don't do it, then I'll give you a scoop. I'll give you an exclusive interview on this other topic." I mean, that's kind of how it works with these reporters out there in the current state of Michigan media. But now that they are aware, now that you've connected the dots, What excuse do they have? Has anybody from any station reached out to you? I mean, I know on X yesterday this was kind of big news. I think this is a massive story, and it should be touched by every single outlet, regardless of your political persuasion. It doesn't matter. This is such a huge case that the Attorney General in Michigan was defrauded, and she kept it secret, allegedly, in order for 2022's fraud to continue to occur and wipe out a lot of different candidates, but 5 of them were top gubernatorial candidates running against Gretchen Whitmer. Then it becomes a story because these bungling idiot Republicans somehow hired some guy they should have Googled first. But she did the exact same thing. So anyway, now that has all been connected by Charlie LeDuff, do you have any confidence that any courageous reporter will get out of bed, so to speak, with the Dana Nessels of Michigan and cover this?
Well, Tom, let me answer it this way, brother. Remember, this was the big story during the election cycle when Whitmer unpopular. She was very unpopular, right? This thing went around the country. This was a big deal. Oh my God, I never heard of such a thing. All right. Well, the guy's in court, and not one reporter showed up. Not one.
Well, not one. I'm going to look up and just double check here because, things had happened pretty quickly in the digital world. And I just want to see if any of our local news outlets have so far even have this anywhere on their websites. And I'm still not seeing it. So in lieu of that, would you do me a favor and I'll join you in this call to our so-called intrepid reporters in Michigan, cover the story? Will you put that out there and say if you're a true reporter, there's no excuse for ignoring this. Follow Charlie. You broke the story. Typically, when a story is broke, all the other news outlets glob onto it and say, "Yeah, this is reporting in the Enjoyer.com or NoBSNewsHour.com. Charlie LeDuff broke the story. Let's get him on the program. Let's talk to him." I mean, that's not happening yet. Would you do it? Would you just put out a call out there on this program and say, "Hey,
No.
do your job"?
Oh no. That wouldn't. Tom. That wouldn't be gentlemanly. I'm not going to get. You got to remember. I'm going to be honest. When LeDuff does it, you don't want sloppy seconds. You know what I mean? If I'm
Right.
going after Facano, nobody going to do it. If I'm going to go after Duggan, nobody's going to do it. If I'm going to do the nursing homes, nobody's going to do it.
Right.
Nobody wants to touch it. I don't know why, but you can just follow me on X. Oh, by the way, I don't know. You know what's weird, bro? I just got to tell you this. Okay, so I used to not do X. I used to do Facebook, right?
Yes. Yep.
And then during COVID, when you talk about the vax or you talk about the elections or whatever, I definitely got shot down. You could tell by the views, the people watching. Now that Zuckerberg has magically seen the light of freedom of speech, people were getting notifications again on Facebook.
On
So
Facebook.
so the yesterday's podcast popped up. Like it got, I don't know, 10,000 views, 20,000 views, a lot of, I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
Zuckerberg unlocked me again.
Yeah, he did. And I think he really, this time around, is sincere, and people criticize him for it. But I think actually he's been one of the many people in this country who have been disillusioned by, he's kind of bent that direction. He's, Silicon Valley, those people who are out there in California typically align themselves with all this far left, progressive, socialist kind of attitude. But I think he's one of the few that have come back of that ilk that have come back and say, this is wrong. This is not why I am a liberal. I'm a liberal for free speech purposes, and I've been shut down, so I'm not going to do this anymore. And I think he's thinking my party has gone off the deep end, and I'm gonna play it straight from here on out, based on his conscience. I really do believe Zuckerberg has seen the light to that degree. I still don't agree with him in a lot of policy positions, but that's fine. But I think that's good news that he's doing that. He's acting on it so quickly. That's because you're right. My stuff on Facebook, I got off Facebook because I'm still on it, but it's so difficult to say anything on there of substance because you're shadow banned or whatever they call it in the Facebook space.
You noticed that, didn't you?
Oh, of course, yeah. And it was true with X under what Jack. It was the same thing with X, big time. I had like 1 million hits on one, and then I did a follow up, and it was like maybe 2 And it's like they caught on. The algorithms caught it and they shut it down immediately. Now that Elon Musk has taken over, it's free speech. Yeah, whatever it is, so long as it's not truly dangerous. Like speech isn't dangerous. It could be if you yell fire in a theater, but other than that, it's the stuff that America was built on, was free speech and argumentation and discourse, and they wanted to get rid of it entirely.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, these two guys stole from each other, right? Why did I do Facebook back in the day? Not just
right,
because I'm old, but you couldn't broadcast on X. Remember?
exactly.
And
Yeah,
X was the place where people like the local media here communicated, right? Liberal, check mark. You could only have a check mark if you were like an actor, a singer, or a member of the media. So it's they ran everybody off. That's why Elon Musk bought it. I got to buy this space because everybody's just getting axed, pilled,
yeah,
kicked
yeah,
out, and then so it becomes reverse, right? The inversion. So X becomes Facebook, and Facebook becomes X. So in order to, Facebook by far is the biggest social media platform in the world, by
undoubtedly.
far,
Yeah,
right? So I think not Elon, Zuckerberg is making a decision for the shareholder. We got to do what Elon Musk is doing. We got to stop censoring. We got to open this thing up, because the conversation's being had on X. So it's an interesting time.
it is. So I want people, because I saw your story on multiple platforms. It was the first I saw it on your website, nobsnewshour.com. Went there because I was looking for it. I was looking for what you had on there, and then I saw it on enjoyer.com. And it's written out, and the video is there too. You got to watch the video. It's classic, very well done. And then it was on YouTube, and I think you said it's on Facebook too. So I saw it in 3 spots. It's on more than that, but I did notice on X that people are picking up on it, but primarily conservatives who are picking up on the story. I hadn't seen any liberals do it, and certainly haven't seen any other like legacy media news outlets see it. So, for my viewers, my listeners, where can they go? What's the best spot for them to go to watch the video and read your piece?
Okay, go to X and go to Charlie LeDuff. If you're not on X, just go to Michigan Enjoyer, enjoyer.com. It's that simple. And,
Yeah.
it was the best opening to my podcast I think I've done in a while. It's really funny. So I would just watch the first 5 minutes of the podcast. I was feeling it, Tom.
Yeah,
You
yeah, I
know
could
what I mean?
tell.
I was feeling it because
You were in the zone.
this is so stupid. This is great. This is like great entertainment and
Yeah.
really serious political matter. It really is. So when those
It's
two
a
collide,
huge political. Yeah, it derailed, and I agree with you. I do not believe Gretchen Whitmer would have been the governor right now if not for Sean Wilmoth and his campaign to defraud all those GOP gubernatorial candidates. And it would have been known if Dana Nessel would have broadcast the fact that her campaign or her initiative was also defrauded by the same guy, but she kept it quiet. And she
yeah.
allowed it to proliferate, and it had real world consequences politically in the state of Michigan.
Well, you know how this job goes. We're supposed to communicate with the campaigns, the camps, the strategists. So
Yeah.
we do. And I know from inside Whitmer's camp, they were deathly afraid of James Craig because he
Yep.
was beating her in the. Everybody remember Tudor Dixon was
Yep.
number 6
Yep.
in the
At that
polls.
time. Yep.
So when they took out the top 5, here she comes with no money, no recognition, and she only lost by 10. She got outspent 5 million to 100 million. So when the East Coast media says Gretchen Whitmer flipped his state blue and boy, it was really a landslide. No. It was Sean Wilmoth and it was Dana Nessel. That's what happened because
Well,
Whitmer would
yeah.
not win again.
No, she wouldn't. And that's exactly what had occurred. I'm so grateful that you're on this. And I don't see you're a tireless reporter and you're out there uncovering a lot of stuff that most people aren't even would not be aware of if it wasn't for you. So I'm grateful for you. Charlie LeDuff, enjoyer.com. Go to his X page. That's where you find all this stuff. And sometimes he just has little tidbits of stuff, kind of hints, like a foreshadowing of what's to come in Charlie LeDuff's world. Charlie, it's good to see you, my friend. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Have a good one, bro. Stay warm.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, it's cold here
Go
in
Lions.
Michigan. Yeah, go Lions all the way. That's right. We got the game coming up this weekend. So I think, I mean, there's a lot happening in Michigan. There's some good stuff too. As you mentioned, the Detroit Lions. Wow, this might be the Super Bowl team this year, and they're going to have a tough. I would like to see the Buffalo Bills and the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl because I do think those are the two best teams in the NFL. Now, I don't necessarily want the Lions to take on the Bills because I think that the Bills are an incredibly difficult team, and they beat the Lions last time around. But those are the two best teams. So you always want to see the two very best go at it. So anyway, Charlie LeDuff writing about this massive story, and if I'll put the call out because I would like to see this finally happen in Michigan with the media landscape here. I'm putting out the call in Detroit, ABC 7, NBC Channel 4, Local 4, Fox 2, CBS Detroit. You guys should be covering this today. And you should be calling Charlie LeDuff because he knows more about this. Apparently, aside from Dana Nessel, he knows more about this than anybody else. And you should be calling Dana Nessel's office, demanding a statement from her and her staff. Maybe try to get her wife on the line. And then the Detroit News and the Detroit Free Press. Don't ignore this story. Like you really Detroit News, not so much when it came to the nursing home scandal, but yeah, they did to a certain degree. To how massive of a scam that was. But when the real numbers came out, the media wasn't all over it, and they should have been because we had been told by this governor that the numbers of the nursing home deaths in the state of Michigan were so much smaller than they actually were when it came to COVID. Charlie LeDuff covered it a number of times. I did a few things as well. It was all ignored by the legacy guys. So change your thinking. Get out of this tight inner circle with your favorite politicians. I'll put the call out to Tim Skubick. Tim Skubick, you should call Dana Nessel and say, what's going on here? And really challenge her on this because this had real serious political consequences. And maybe that was the reason why she kept quiet on this story. So the Attorney General, Dana Nessel, this was what was kind of infuriating, taking the moral high ground when charging that felon, Sean Wilmoth, that guy right there, for derailing Republican campaigns with fraudulent signatures. And Dana Nessel kind of embarrassed the Republican campaigns because they didn't Google this guy. All you had to do is simply Google him, and you would have found out that he was a fraudster. Well, that same felon is the same guy who defrauded her ballot initiative. Dana Nessel's and her wife's ballot initiative. Dana Nessel conveniently stayed quiet. She stayed silent about that in 2020, 2 years prior to the midterms. And now voters are kind of wondering, like, listen, is justice truly blind here, or is it just selective? You know, if you don't want there to be doubts about the judicial system, you wouldn't do things like this. When the Attorney General of Michigan, Dana Nessel, aggressively pursued Republicans for unknowingly hiring Sean Wilmoth, but ignored her wife's campaign's identical hiring mistake, it's a glaring double standard. You know, selectively enforcing election integrity laws, and she charged the guy when it came to the 2022 campaigns, and she embarrassed the Republicans again. But Dana Nessel, I mean, she seems to have undermined the trust, allegedly, as Charlie will say, that voters placed in her office to uphold justice fairly. The reporters should be going after this guy. Charlie said not one reporter showed up to that court hearing after this guy was there. Why? Did they, maybe they did know that she also defrauded Dana Nessel's wife's campaign. Maybe they did. We don't know. All you can do is speculate at this point. But it's one thing to prosecute fraud. It is. But it's something that should be done consistently. And it's another to wield that prosecution as a political weapon against opponents while giving personal allies a free pass. And, I still maintain there's something more to this Lee Chatfield investigation that she is burying because her own office had stated there's a lot of embarrassing details about other elected leaders that we don't want to get out there. So we're going to prevent the release of these, search warrants, the things that should have been released about 50 days after or so charges were filed. But she covered it up. It's not just about optics. It's about the very principle of equal justice under the law. And if the roles were reversed and Republican Attorney General had ignored their spouse's campaign while targeting Democrats, the outrage would be deafening. Voters would know about this, and they should demand accountability, not only from their elected leaders, but also from those tasked with ensuring fair play in our political process. You should call your news stations. That's how I feel. You should call your so-called journalists and tell them to get on the story, and they're ignoring it. And listen, I've worked in so many newsrooms, and I know what they're going to think. Oh, we got a caller, we got a viewer, we got a listener, we got a reader who's complaining that we're not covering this, but they don't understand that we know what's journalism more than they do. And this editorial high ground that they take and this arrogance. This is what's seeping in the background that you don't see in the newsrooms and the conversations about, some stupid viewers calling now. Oh, yes, sir. Okay, thank you. That's how they kind of approach it. But if enough of you call, I think they can't help but cover the story. And I hope they take this seriously. And if anybody is a journalist or reporter watching this, I don't know how many of them do. I don't think any of them do, because I'm not on the ins any longer. But if you are, just listen, take a courageous step here. You will be a hero in my book if you take on the story. If you work for one of these main newspapers, or you work for one of these, network affiliates in Detroit or in Lansing or in Grand Rapids or even out of state, say, hey, guess what's happening in Michigan? That'd be great. Because Dana Nessel has been lecturing in front of the cameras that are ready and willing to be there about vetting contractors like Sean Wilmoth, yet her wife's campaign funneled over $1 million to the same fraudster. $1 million with very disastrous results. And who knows, if she had acted in a way, maybe we would have had a different outcome in the 2022 midterms. All right. Thanks to Charlie LeDuff for covering this. And he's taken some hits over his career because he's pretty bold and brave and just goes up to the guy right there and to a lot of opposition. Okay, some stories that are making headlines. This dramatic breakthrough. President-elect Donald Trump, he's taking credit, and I think rightfully so. A lot of people are giving him credit for securing a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, which ends this devastating 15-month war, and really ensuring the release of the 98 hostages that are allegedly still alive. We hope and pray they are. After months of what they're saying, this is Joe Biden's really indecision about this. It was Donald Trump's unwavering stance that, he threatened there would be, quote, hell to pay if no deal was reached prior to him being inaugurated on January 20th. And what do you know? A deal was made, and it forced Hamas to the table. Even some Joe Biden officials, like this, State Department spokesman Matthew Miller, he credited Donald Trump's team for sealing the deal, and I'm glad he did. John Kirby, it was difficult for him to admit that yesterday. The way I watched his interview that he did, I think it was with Fox News, and he was trying to say, well, what kind of credit do you give Trump? And he said, everybody deserves credit. Biden, Netanyahu, and the Qatar, and they do, rightfully so. But the question was more targeted to, did Donald Trump's statement that there will be hell to pay if they don't release the hostages prior to him taking office, did that help? And John Kirby said something along the lines of, well, I'm just glad he didn't say some things that he probably wanted to say, because that could have derailed this whole thing. He had a hard time giving him credit. But a lot of others are not. Israeli leaders praised Donald Trump. They called it like swift diplomacy. Benjamin Netanyahu was like, yeah, Donald Trump was the one that brought this over the finish line, and they contrasted with Biden's lackluster efforts. It was a decisive move. And, this is Donald Trump's doctrine of peace through strength, much like Ronald Reagan did very effectively. So here are 5 examples of major officials and sources who attributed the success of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire agreement to President Donald Trump. Matthew Miller, as I already mentioned, the Joe Biden State Department spokesman, said, when it comes to the involvement on President-elect Trump's team, it's been absolutely critical in getting this deal over the line. The office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Netanyahu personally thanked President Trump for his assistance, stating it helped advance the release of the hostages and bring an end to the suffering. In Qatar, a top Qatari official there, they've been very involved in the negotiations. The senior Qatari diplomat credited Donald Trump and his envoy, Steve Witkoff, major player in this, for pushing the ceasefire deal, they said, over the line. like it would not have happened without Donald Trump and his envoy, Steve Witkoff. The Times of Israel, and this is via Arab officials, this is what they said, the Arab officials. They said that Trump's envoy influenced Netanyahu more in one meeting than Joe Biden did all year. Donald Trump in one meeting did more than Joe Biden did all year to reach this agreement. The Washington Post, Ishan Tharoor said this. He reported that the successful brokering of the deal could be chalked up to Trump's imminent return to office. And so you'll notice some of those are in New York Times said some things that are pretty similar to that as well. So listen, the ones who refuse to give Trump credit is because it's political. And no doubt that he's about to take office. He demanded this deal be in place before he took office. And just a few days prior to that, the deal gets made yesterday. So good to hear that. Whoever got the credit, Joe Biden, thank you for allowing Trump to work with you on this. I think that's fantastic. I think that all the Democrats, Republicans who want the release of the hostages working on this, congratulations. You all did a good job. And I'm glad now it's over the line. And we hope it becomes a reality because it may take several more weeks for this to really play out. Okay, to Michigan and the roads situation. Governor Gretchen Whitmer put out a social media post. You might have seen this the other day, saying that she's going to bring down the costs for Michigan residents. She's going to keep working on bringing down the cost of living. And but then she said this, that she wants to raise taxes to fix the roads. She wants to increase costs. So her Fix the Roads pledge has, it's become a hallmark of her tenure, but it still remains unfulfilled. And, just a year ago, they got like a D grade, as you see here. And then a lot more effort needs to be put into this. She thinks the solution is raising taxes. So she was speaking at the Detroit Auto Show. Whitmer called for bipartisan collaboration. What do you know? Now that there's a bipartisan control of the legislature, she's now calling for bipartisanship. But it was signaling her intent to explore new avenues for road funding. But her critics are saying, listen, this latest push, on top of other pushes for a tax increase, is yet another chapter in her pattern of prioritizing corporate welfare over meaningful infrastructure improvements and increasing the cost for Michigan residents. And her track record it shows a history of pretty ambitious tax proposals. Her initial 2019 plan, if you remember, to hike the gas tax by 45 cents per gallon faced swift rejection from Republican lawmakers because she said she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't raise taxes. But then she gets in office and she does. And the legislature instead delivered a budget reallocating existing funds for the roads without raising taxes at all. But since then, the Democratic efforts under her leadership have yielded minimal progress. There is a lot of construction, I will admit that, going around the state, and it's caused a lot of traffic, but that's because the roads need to be fixed. But it's not nearly what is necessary to fix the roads. In her vernacular, she says it differently, but that's her pledge. So Michigan's roads are still riddled with potholes. Her promise is unfulfilled. It's going on almost 8 years. And we thought she'd have it fixed in her first term. Then she said, I needed another term to do it, and so we'll see. But Republican leaders like Speaker Matt Hall, they've championed solutions that avoid burdening residents with taxes, including reallocating corporate income tax revenues directly to road improvements, maybe take away those billions in subsidies and put those to the roads. But the proposals clash with Whitmer's strategy, of course, of these funneling those billions of dollars into corporate subsidies, which would benefit automakers through the SOAR fund. That's the fund. It involves the MEDC that provides these subsidies. So Republican Representative Donnie Steele said this, that the governor talks bipartisanship. She talks bipartisanship, but has consistently chosen flashy corporate incentives over infrastructure. And she said that Michigan families deserve roads and not rhetoric. So we'll find out what happens. I certainly hope there's not another tax increase because Michigan is already taxed hard enough. Okay, let's see if you have any comments here, any questions. We're going to look at the board there. Cameron Harris is checking those out and see if we can find anything as we're perusing the comments section on Facebook, X, and YouTube. And remember, we're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Anything out there, Cameron, that you see? this event. Oh, we got Taz back. He's always interested. All right. Thank you, Tom. Citizens of Michigan have to know this. Citizens should not have to discover this from honest, hardworking journalists and reporters like you and Charlie. Keep up the great work. Taz, thank you so much. And I'll say this is just something that Charlie LeDuff did. He let me know about it. And I said, come on my show because we need to talk about this. And so he did all the legwork, and you should check out what he did with us at enjoyer.com. Because just go to his X page, x.com, of course. You can look at Charlie LeDuff. But he's written about this, and he's got the goods on video as well. So, yeah, Taz, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Good to hear from you. What else we have? Walter Duro is back. Candidates who have a real ground game use volunteers to gather signatures. You're right, Walter. But as you know, it's a very difficult thing to do. And nowadays, all these campaigns have been hiring vendors to do the groundwork, to go out and hire, signature gatherers. And even if it was their own people, who knows if the same thing would not have happened. The issue becomes, I think this has been happening a very long time, and it's only been now recently caught because they're starting to pay attention to it. But I have no faith in the signature verification efforts in the state of Michigan. And as many times as we've heard from like Jocelyn Benson, for example, that the signatures, we don't have to verify signatures because basically on the assumption and on the premise that people are pretty honest. And so unless it's an egregious signature that seems way off, we're not going to check them. We're not going to validate. I mean, by the way, you don't need your identification either. If you don't have your ID, what do? Just sign here, and then we'll assume that it's correct. They do that with the vote, your ballot. But when it comes to gathering signatures to get on the ballot, there is massive fraud that has now been revealed, and it seems like it's been going on for years and years, unchecked, and potentially decades. And it's now just coming to light. So to say that that's happening, you're aware of it, but it's not happening when you're casting your vote or casting your ballot, it doesn't match up. So it just is another reason to be less, less encouraged or maybe less confident in the current leaders in the Secretary of State and in this state, claiming that all of this fraud talk is just pure nonsense and conspiracy theory when evidence keeps coming out that it's pretty systemic, at least in the state of Michigan. All right, let's bring up another comment here. Cameron Harris is watching those. Annie, hi, Annie. Good to see you as always. She should have been more sympathetic as her wife fell into the same trap a year earlier. It is concerning that her lack of action on this caused the governor's race to lose qualified candidates. It is. It's a very good point, and that's kind of the gist of what Charlie was saying, that, listen, this didn't have to happen. If Dana Nessel had taken the same approach to her own campaign and her own wife's campaign when they were defrauded, 200,000 votes kept their initiative off the ballot. That's what happened in 2022 with these gubernatorial candidates who happened to be Republican. They were defrauded by the same exact individual, allegedly, as Charlie says. And you didn't do anything about it until that happened, but it didn't have to happen if you didn't ignore it in the first place. Thank you for that comment, Annie. Very important point. Thank you. Let's bring up another. Cliff Frost is back. Hey, how are you, Cliff? Good to see you and good to hear from you. Not another tax increase. Yeah, I'm with you. That's regarding the Whitmer proposal to raise taxes to fix the roads in the state of Michigan. And she's going to do it with a smile. Going to say, hey, this is all for the good of Michiganders and Michiganians and the Michiganish who are out there who use our roads. There's other ways to do it. And it seems to me if there wasn't so much wasteful spending, we could fix the roads. Remember, at the beginning of 2024, we had a $9 billion surplus that is wiped out. Where did that money go? Boy, if that money was used to fix the roads, we'd be all good. Smooth roads from here, I think. Thanks for that, Cliff. Good to see you. Let's bring up another comment here. Jim Chikowski. Hi, Jim. How are you? I hope they drop the idea of toll roads. I do too. Because the toll roads might work in a location where you get a lot of through traffic. Like in Illinois, they have them because people are traveling there from Ohio and Indiana and Michigan and Pennsylvania, and they're going through that state. So a lot of people who use those toll roads are actually people who are not going to keep using it every single day. In Michigan, what they're proposing is that they put in these toll roads where if you just want to go to work every single day to drive on your own freeway that your tax dollars already pay for, you got to pay an additional fee every single day. So if you're up in, let's say, the Midland area, and you're in Midland, you want to drive to, I don't know, Frankenmuth, let's say, for example, and you do that every day. You got to pay every single day on top of your other taxes that you have to pay. No, that's not right. Michigan is not a toll road friendly state. Let's not do it. It doesn't make sense here. Thanks so much. Good to see you again. Another one here. Let's bring up Rebecca Gallagher. Hi, Rebecca. Keep exposing their lies. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca, for your comment. I appreciate it. That's what reporters are supposed to do, and I wish we had more reporters in the state of Michigan who would expose this stuff. But Charlie said it right. These are the ones that work in the newsrooms, primarily in legacy media outlets, are pretty good friends with Dana Nessel and Gretchen Whitmer and Jocelyn Benson and Mark Brewer and these other Democratic operatives. And they make it pretty clear, those politicians, that if you're not real friendly, they're not going to talk to you anymore. They're not going to pick up the phone. They're not going to come in your studio. They're not going to sit down for an interview unless you are more Democratic Party friendly. Those are the words, Democratic friendly. And if you're not, we're not coming on your show. So what happens is they're like, yeah, you're right. We will be. We won't push back on these things. We will agree to these questions only. And, that's how it is. And it's a shame. I think that the reporters in the newsrooms should take a much tougher stance and acknowledge the harm that's been done over the past 2 years in Michigan, past 4 years in this country. Thank you. We have another one, I believe. That's all. Oh, but thanks for your comments. I really appreciate it as always. And Cameron, my boy, thanks for watching out for them and directing the show. All right. We are going to be back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern, of course, streaming live. TomJordanLive.com. We're on Facebook, X, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Thanks for watching. God bless you. We'll see you back here tomorrow.